Plyometric training has certainly become the in thing to do with athletic development over the past few years. And most of the time people jump on Instagram, they'll see something that looks fancy, nice and colourful, then they try and put that into their program and see if they get results. When it comes to plyometric training or jump training in general, it's so important that we nail the basics and get the real things right so we get a carryover, because nobody has enough time to be spending in the gym jumping around just hoping for the best. And one of the most common jump options that are chosen by athletes, especially in season, is a box jump. And to be honest, it's probably the one that's done the most poorly of everything. So it's really important to understand what you're actually trying to get out of a box jump. So many people think it's about just jumping to the highest box. For one point, most of the time when you jump to the highest box, you're actually not changing your center of mass displacement. And what I mean by that is you're not getting your hips any higher. You're actually just getting your knees higher and increasing the range of motion at your hips. And for a lot of people, it's not a range of motion they can naturally get to. It's a range of motion that they're forcing themselves to get to. Hence why you see all the gym fail videos where people fall backwards on the soft plyometric box, because they can't actually get to the height that they need to get to. So what we want to make sure we do when we're working with any jump option, but in particular a box jump, is we want to look at the hips, because when we're on field or we're in our sport, it doesn't matter how quickly we get our knees to our ears. It's how much force we can put into the ground, and that transfers as to how high our hips actually go. So we're going to have a look at a couple of box jumps here and compare the two and take a few things away. So we can see with this simple box jump example, on the left we've got Brendan and on the right we have Brogan. Now if we just stick to the landing aspect, we can see the key focus that we want to do with our jumps is to get our hips higher. Anything else does not help us on the field. We want to get our hips higher, or at least change the vertical displacement of our center of mass. So when we actually look at the hip height here, on the left with the smaller box, Brendan's landing in a very neat and nice landing position with a very strong hip height. If we look across to the right, Brogan has actually landed with his knees up into his ears, huge displacement of his hip range, but his hips are actually at the same height that Brendan's are. So when we talk about jump height or vertical jump height, they've actually jumped exactly the same height, but what they haven't done is achieved it in the same way. Now you can see with Brogan's position, if he has any hip impingement, he has poor ankle mobility, this over and over and over is going to defeat the whole purpose of using a box, because the reason we use the box is to reduce the load on our lower limb when we jump. If there's no box there, they have to absorb the height of landing when they hit the ground. In this position for Brendan, he's got very little absorption that needs to take place because he's landed perfectly on the box. So a key thing we also want to look at is how they actually take off, and this is what we want to coach with the box. So when working with a box jump, one of the best cues we want to look at for landing is actually to mimic the takeoff position. So you see when Brendan goes down to ready himself in a counter movement, this is the position he achieves. A nice neutral position for jump and for landing. So when he takes off and lands on the box, sets himself up, this is the similar angle we want to hit every single time. So we want to make sure that the hips are shifting at the same height. We're getting that hip displacement, but because of the box height, it's absorbing that landing pressure really nicely. He's not dropping into it into an excessive range of motion. So at the end of the day, if you're landing incorrectly on a box jump, it's not going to magically kill you, it's not going to magically cause huge issues straight away. But what it does do is it ruins the whole reason why we're choosing a box jump. And in athletic development, especially in season, we don't have the time to waste with useless exercises. We have a finite amount of time to fit in really good quality strength and power work, and we want to make sure we capitalize on every single option we choose. So if you're going to do a box jump, do it correctly, get the most bang for your buck, and you'll see the carryover.